Okay, that's perfect. Okay, so I think we're going to be, I've said, I think we're going to be quite a small group today. And very shortly, I'm going to introduce you to my co-host, Nicky Herrington, who on my screen is top left. And I know Nicky has got a really thought-provoking, gentle presentation for you today. So I hope you're going to find that very helpful. This is part two of our two-part webinar sessions. The first on founder presence, sorry. And the first of these was 2 weeks ago. The video of it is up on YouTube. So if you haven't seen that, it's probably a very good place to start, is with the original video. Now, I'm going to make some preliminary comments. I just wanted to refer back to that first presentation, and then I'm going to be handing over to Nicky, and she's going to be talking to you more about how you manifest this founder presence, how we step into our founder presence and deliver it with comfort, with ease. So Nicky's going to talk to you about that. But just rehashing the conversation that we had last time. The points that I really wanted to make is that our market is already crowded with interior designers. And I do believe that in the coming years, the challenge that we face as well from digital businesses is going to get ever greater. And I do believe that it is going to be the difference, the humanity that we bring to our practice, that is going to help us to differentiate ourselves from other service providers. So getting a head start on that now, really beginning to work with your own founder presence, figure out what it is, figure out how to bring that alive visibly in the market, is really important work. You know, it's work that is going to make a difference to your business. Now, I don't know if you saw, I think maybe you'll have seen that just last week, I think Alex Dawley, who you probably all know, interior designer, posted quite a sort of controversial post where she was talking about she had been approached to appear as the interior designer on a TV show. And when she got the brief for the TV show, it was clearly just a sort of glorified cushion fluffing, tidying up sort of entity in this to be on this TV show. And she turned it down because she hates the fact that our industry gets misrepresented and our technical and professional skills are not recognized, and that often comes through too in the appreciation that clients might have for their interior designer. Now, so she was most concerned about how our industry appears to the world at large, but she got a great deal of feedback from interior designers who said that they have similar problems, you know, just trying to sell their services to clients. So they have a more sort of day-to-day experience of this, whereas I don't think Alex Dawley has that problem so much, but she was more concerned about the worldview. Now, I think that the solution to a good deal of this actually comes from having a well-developed founder presence. Because when you are authoritative, when you are perceived to have authority, when you are perceived to be original, when you have a differentiation between yourself and the other people who are competing in your market, it's going to make it easier for you to engage with your clients, to generate trust with your clients, and to have your clients really believe that they can invest in you. And so that is where founder presence is not just, you know, something horrible that you have to do on social media. It's actually a really important intrinsic part of your business practice. It's what's going to result in your business being successful. So, you know, I don't think I can actually bang on about this too much. So it's not vanity, it is actually infrastructure for your business. Now, however, if that was all it was, if it was like marketing, we could all say, okay, how do we do it? Let's do it. Let's get on with it. It's fine. But it's not, because it's got this second edge to it. And the second edge is a sort of resistance to performance. It's a fear that we have. We're no longer talking about just being ourselves in public. We're actually talking about, we feel we're talking about a form of performance or theatre, or of becoming somebody else, or of not being authentic. And in fact, in that respect, I think we're looking at it from the wrong angle, although I can understand why we do, because it takes a lot to get over those hesitations that you might have. So your founder presence is not inauthentic. It is, you design it to perform for your business what your business most needs from you. It presents the parts of you that are the most steady, the most generous, the most thoughtful, the most assured, the most creatively alive. And you do that by really understanding initially how you come across, and then by curating those different aspects of you into a bundle that is what the market needs you to be. It's what your business needs you to be. So it's selective. You're selecting the parts of yourself that you're going to take forward. And as part of that, we're also keeping some parts private. We're choosing what goes out in public and what we keep for our families and we keep for ourselves. Now, I have put in Hothouse, under the Files tab, there is a little worksheet there that you can use to help you define your own founder presence. So it's a little exercise, it's a fairly substantial exercise actually, that you can work through with AI to really pin down the essence of you, and how you are distinct and what you should focus on. And I have done it for myself, and I have found it so useful, because it's like having guardrails. It defines you, it tells you what to take out there, and by virtue of that, it tells you what not to take out there. It shows the bits that you show, and it carves off the bits that you won't necessarily want to talk about, the bits that aren't relevant or appropriate. So the worksheet for that is under the Files tab in the Hothouse group. And as I said, I found it extremely helpful to actually go through that practice myself. So now, sorry, just check my notes. I would very much like to introduce you to Nicky, because Nicky is going to talk to you about the embodiment side of this, how we can work to overcome that resistance, that fear that we feel of actually stepping forward and becoming more visible. So she deals with that side of things. Now, Nicky is an actor. She started out her career on stage and screen, TV and theatre. And after 10 or 15 years of that, she transitioned and she became a photographer. So she has observed this from both sides of the lens. She knows what it feels like to stand on both sides of the lens. And I have to say, I think I can possibly even credit Nicky with being the reason why founder presence, I became aware of founder presence in the first place, because Nicky and I have a mutual friend, Helen, and I saw the photo shoot that Nicky did for Helen. And I, knowing Helen very well, was astonished at how Nicky managed to translate the Helenness of Helen into that photo shoot. It felt so much like her. And it was right. It was so right for her business, presenting her in the way that was absolutely optimal for her business. And that was when I think I first started thinking about this concept. So Nicky, thank you very much for that.
Thank you. That's really kind of you.
No, and I've just sort of occurred to me when I was thinking about it today. So I'm going to hand over to Nikki, who is going to talk to you about her side of this particular thing. And in fact, Nikki and I are going to be doing an event together in March. I've put a link to the event details in the chat if anybody wants to have a look at what we're going to be up to. But it's a live in-person one-day event where we're going to be focusing entirely on founder presence. So if anybody fancies that, we'll be in West Sussex on the 22nd of March. But anyway, Nikki, without further ado, take it away.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. I'm going to do the tricky bit first. I'm going to share my screen and let's get this going. So bear with me. Mm, that's interesting. The share isn't working in the same way because is that because I'm recording potentially?
Uh, Maybe. Hang on a sec. Let me see if
Oh,
you.
hang on. Perhaps it is working.
There we go.
Perhaps it is working. I'm fine with speech, body, acting, presenting, tech. This side of tech, less so. Let's have a look. How's that?
That's perfect, Nikki. You're all there.
Brilliant. So, yeah, as Julia explained, I'm Nikki, and I originally trained as an actor, and I spent many, many years working in theatre, working in television, including National Theatre, BBC, ITV. But then I had children, and things shifted, and so um, I then became working as a photographer. But the thing about the performing background is it really teaches you quickly how to be regulated under attention. And that regulation is really important. But then I went into photography and I'm documenting founders and creatives in moments of their visibility. And I realized that I was able to help them and apply some of the techniques and things that I had studied. And so I found this kind of sweet spot, and that's the kind of area that I've become very passionate about. And so I now coach founders in this kind of intersection of regulation, voice, and what I'm calling gentle visibility. So it's being visible but without the strain. And across all of that, I have discovered that actually we're kind of exploring what actually communicates your authority when you are under that sort of attention, when the attention is sharpened on you, because that is the moment that really matters. What happens to you when you receive attention? Um, so here are some of the highlights that I've had. Here we go. Let me just move that because that's in my way. So yeah, how do you feel when attention is placed on you? And founder presence, as we are exploring it, it's about designing, it's about curating your authenticity and choosing which parts of you are leading in your business. And the embodiment part is how that choice becomes visible because the authority isn't just kind of transmitted through intention, through cerebral thinking. It's actually conveyed through physiology. And at its core, it's about being coherent underneath. Can you remain present when you're being seen? And as Julia said, it's not about performing, it's not about that kind of outward performative element, but it's equally not withdrawing and being guarded. So when visibility increases online, perhaps, in-person client meetings, in pricing conversations, or when you're presenting concept, or something often will happen in the body, specifically in the nervous system. And as you become aware that the attention is then on you, your body is reacting before your mind is even processing. And that shift is felt by you and other people around you. And so when we're feeling watched or when we're feeling judged, that shift can show up as different things. Perhaps your breath, gets quicker and heightened and it's up here and it's more snatched. Perhaps you're speaking a lot quicker, or maybe there's tension in your shoulders, in your jaw. Maybe you start to over-explain and you feel the silence and you kind of endlessly talk. So the body is speaking before your expertise is, if that makes sense. And what we really want is for you to remain present whilst you're being seen. And as actors, we call that the second state of attention. So you're grounded in your body, your focus is outward, you're really alert, and you're communicating, and often non-verbal communication, but your breath is steady. And most importantly, you're connected to your intention and who you're speaking to. And that's an embodied founder presence. So there's different signals. You know, we talk about verbal, we talk about non-verbal, but if your words are really, really calm, but your body is giving off a different energy, perhaps you're rushing, people will feel the rushing. And equally, if your explanation is really clear, but your breath is kind of snatched, you're not supported, maybe your pace is too fast, the expertise that you have kind of gets diluted. But when you're grounded, when there's a steadiness and you're regulated, then the message will land with the weight that it's supposed to land. And I just need to say, the goal is never to eliminate nerves. But what we want to do is develop your capacity and your ability to remain steady whilst you're being witnessed, whilst you're being seen. So the nerves are present, but you're steady and you're regulated. And that's the key part. So we don't want to be pushing, we don't want to be performing confidence, but steadiness can look like different sorts of things. It can be taking a moment and having a pause, or finishing your sentence and letting it land without kind of overfilling, over speaking afterwards. It might be to do with the pace that you're moving. It might be your body language, that you're perhaps slightly slower than the room. You might take a breath before you're responding. You might pause. Because when the breath is high, when we're snatching, when we're feeling kind of charged and dysregulated, the body will tense, will have tension, it will tighten. When the body is tightening, the voice can strain, and when the voice strains, the authority is weakened. But when your breath is settled, when you feel regulated and you feel grounded, your voice can be supported, it's open, it's resonant, and that's when we're perceived as having presence, and we're anchored and we're connected. And actually, that state of presence is actually even more visible when there's a camera on us, because a camera picks up everything. But a lot of the visibility fatigue, of what I'm calling it, comes from like this constant internal checking. You know, do I look credible? Do I sound okay? Is what I'm saying landing? Is the camera working? Is the tech okay if we're doing online? Um, and actually, it's incredibly overwhelming. We can get really tempted to avoid the whole thing. And that internal commentary, again, kind of dysregulates the body. It tightens us. It takes you out of the moment completely. So you don't feel supported, you're dysregulated. And what's begun as like a connection actually then becomes just self-conscious efforting. But the camera itself is completely neutral. It's just recording what's present. So when you're regulated, when your voice is settled, your mind doesn't have to work so hard. And this is a very important point here. So if under pressure, your default mode might be to speed up or tense in your shoulders or over-explain, that pattern that has become kind of automatically, it will return unless you rehearse a different way, unless you train yourself with an alternative. And so founder presence is built in the same way that other aspects of professional capabilities are. You know, it's repetition, it's rehearsal. And so we can practice being watched. We can practice building up our tolerance for allowing there to be some silence. We can practice the discomfort that we might feel when we're being observed, but we rehearse staying in it. We rehearse being there under pressure. And once you keep doing this and you're embedding it into your physical body, it becomes your new baseline. And over time, it's what becomes muscle memory. They become embodied. That's when your presence stops feeling effortful. So often we get so caught up in the thinking, particularly when we're planning mode and we're in our heads and we're very conscious about what we want, where we're going, what we want to do. We might be feeling marketing burnout or trying to show up in ways that don't actually fit us. And this is a really key point as well, with like forcing strategies that don't actually feel like they're going to work for you. And over time, all of those things compound and they create discord. And I've gone through this myself. So you sort of almost start performing a version of yourself, and that's not sustainable either. So the body feels that, you feel that. There might be tightness, there might be problems with pacing or pitch, your tone of voice, confusion, overwhelm, because you're trying to work in ways that don't work for your system. So embodied presence, founder presence, is really about the intention, but it's also regulating your physiology. So it's allowing your visibility to match your capacity. And it's not about someone else's blueprint or someone else's energy, it's about yours. And just as a reminder, again, nerves are completely normal. They don't mean that you're failing in any kind of way. They're actually just a marker of growth. They're a marker of capacity. And it might be feel quite stretchy at times, but that capacity is something that can be built with practice, through rehearsal, through repetition, and what I'm calling kind of manageable exposure. You know, it's not launching straight in to try and do something front facing, talking directly to a camera. It's easing in. There's ways of building up to it. There's lots of different types of visibility. And we're not just always talking about speaking to Instagram, the void of Instagram. But to start with, it's about being completely grounded in your body. It's with your focus is outward, but you're grounded, you're settled, you're really clear on what matters, and you're regulated. And that is founder presence. That's what we call it. And there's obviously lots of different ways into that. There's voice work, there's work on body language, there's lots to do with breath work. But essentially, this founder presence that Julie and I are talking about is completely accessible. It takes practice and it takes rehearsal, but it's about being completely regulated and you knowing exactly what you're doing and connecting to your intention. So that is my little presentation on that. So I'm going to stop sharing that and come back. There we go. Hopefully that worked okay.
Yes, I think we got that. That was very clear. Thank you. Talking of all of this embodiment, I think I'm quite tense today and it's coming out in my voice, which is very odd. Um, do we have some questions? I mean, maybe Nicky, could you give us a sort of a couple of tips for how to begin to walk into the shallows of
Mm,
this
yeah.
experiment? What first small steps can people take?
I think perhaps it's not about in the first instance when you're just trying to acclimatize yourself, then I think it's about practice and it's about getting reps in without even a view to press share on anything. I think that's one of the cleanest ways to get going so that actually if you're thinking about what steps you're going to take with your visibility and they involve the camera, certainly just start to get used to seeing yourself on camera. By saying that, I don't mean always doing it in selfie mode and looking at yourself whilst you're doing it, because as we all know, that is incredibly difficult. But I mean, if you have a tripod, or even if you can just pop it somewhere, I used to say to my clients, with a scrunchie and a tin of beans is actually a portable tripod, something that could have your phone. So you can begin to practice saying something or being seen, or perhaps it's more you doing something in the background. So it's what we call B-roll, but not with a view to sharing that straight away, just for you to see it and for you to start getting comfortable seeing yourself. And with that, obviously watching the internal monologue that can come. But that's one of the first things I would say, just to start having a look, facing it, you don't then have to share it until you feel more comfortable.
I can imagine actually that must be really helpful in getting you over the, oh my God, is that what I look like?
That's it. Yeah,
Stage,
yeah.
the first stage,
And I,
so that, it's almost like an inoculation or a vaccination
yeah,
against what you actually look like.
yes,
So, even if you're not doing anything, you're just wandering around,
yeah,
you get a sense of how you're going to look when you look at yourself on
yeah,
film.
exactly. And I mean, I've worked for many years now with clients, and it's very frustrating, but I understand it completely. And nearly every single, mainly woman that I have worked with has always said to me in the prep before we even shoot, I hate my photograph t being taken. I really, really hate it. I'm really deeply uncomfortable. And then obviously there's a small chance then when they see the gallery, that tendency is there as well. And actually, quite often it's just that they're not used to seeing themselves in this particular way. And as we're talking about a designed and curated way of presenting yourself and your business to the world, which is full of intention, we just need to get over that initial kind of shock. There's another thing that can be helpful as well. And a lot of it, again, it comes from a kind of rehearsal room, really. It's about getting your mindset into the right kind of prepared state. And by that, I mean, audio can be really, really useful. And actually, it's something that we're going to share with people who book onto the retreat, some preparatory audios that I'm going to pre-record. And actually, it's almost like setting seed for your brain to start to see yourself in this other way. And that is really, really helpful. And in the same way, an actor would never go from getting the part to performing it. There's a big process of preparation where you're laying the foundations and you're rehearsing and you're embedding it and you're going over it. So audio and visualization can be really, really helpful in that as well.
Yeah. I one of someone I know quite well, Leo of Kinder Designs. I noticed that on her Instagram today, she's got a piece that is just voiceover,
Mm,
and it's incredibly powerful,
yeah,
actually. It really, I, I feel like I know her, and it really feels like her,
yeah,
just with this audio track over the
yeah.
top of the thing that she's showing.
Well,
Um, and
yeah,
and that struck me as being every bit as powerful as the face to camera bit.
absolutely. And that's kind of what I was alluding to. There are so many different ways of doing visibility. And if we're just looking at social media for one moment, the B-roll of you doing something, maybe you're looking over some work, or maybe it's another aspect of your business, that can have obviously just text over the top, which is still you being visible, revealing things about you. It can have audio, music, I mean, but absolutely, if it has voiceover, it's quite, some people find it a much nicer, more gentler way in, so they don't feel quite as exposed, but actually it's full of personality and it really, really lands, as it obviously has for you today.
Yeah,
Um, and again, the types of B-roll that you can do vary enormously. Some people do it without even really being in, you know, seen. It can be point of view over the shoulder as you're doing things. So if you have a real initial resistance to it, and you think, I just don't want to be seen, there are lots of different ways of doing this.
yeah. I mean, I look around the screen today and I see a bunch of great looking people. Everybody here, looks super. They look fabulous. And yet I'm confident that most of the people here today don't think they look fabulous. They don't think that.
Mm.
And I've I had a photograph taken of me back when I was 37 or something. It was a really good, light, really nice photograph. And I think that since then, every image of myself I've compared to that photograph of myself when I was 37, and they all fail by comparison. So I think the biggest thing that you can do for yourself is just get over it. That's what you look like.
Yeah.
Actually, you look great. You can't see it. In 20 years' time, you'll look back on photographs of yourself now and think, God, I was gorgeous.
Yeah. What was I moaning
I,
about?
what was I complaining about? So I think, that sorry, I'm going to be the bad cop to your good cop. And I'm going to say, you just got to get over it. You
Mm.
know, that sorry is just not an acceptable excuse.
There are also
So
other things, sorry, Julia, that I meant to say
yeah,
on,
yeah.
I meant to add just then that when we're looking at B-roll or something to ease us in, and actually it might be something that you find with this picture of you, you mentioned the light, and that is absolutely, I mean, I'm not a great example right now. I've got side light. It's a bit, a bit shadowy, but it is such a game changer where you position yourself in relation to just being near a window and having the natural light will do so much for you as opposed to doing something that way inevitably obviously won't do so much, but it's a very, very important part where you put yourself and where the light is makes a huge difference
Well,
to skin.
I'm not the expert here, but I know before I film anything, I do it face to selfie. I do it on the selfie camera, but I will put the camera in selfie and I'll stand in the middle of the room and I'll rotate 360 degrees
Perfect.
and look at the point at which I have, I was like, I look 52, I look 51, oh, I look 49. I'm going to take, I'm
Yeah.
going to go with that angle. So it's really helpful to do that rotation before you start filming to get at least to get the very best light. Okay, I think I've done too much talking here. So we must have questions from the floor. Would anybody like to ask Nicky for any tips of getting started or how to go? Jenny, off you go.
Thank you, Nicky. That was really helpful. This is maybe a question very suited to an actor. What are your views as to how much value there is in scripting something beforehand and trying to slavishly follow that script compared to being more authentic off the cuff? Is there a place for both of those approaches?
I think if we're talking about social media type of visibility, I know it's sort of quite common at the moment. People are using, you can tell when they're using the scripted, you can get kind of auto cue. I don't know if you've noticed this. It's like an overlay that goes over the phone. Personally, I think it reads like you're reading from a script. And I think in that instance, there's a slight disconnection. And actually, given the fact that if it's something you're recording yourself, you could just keep, you could do quite a few takes. I would always encourage when it's for social media that actually it's just you talking. If you can, you can have bullet points, obviously, you can have things near you, but to do it fully scripted, because the minute you're trying to think about the words that you're learning, it takes you out of the moments. It sort of slightly disconnects, and actually you're then really far more in your brain thinking about what you're saying rather than how you're coming across. And actually what we want is feeling and connection. And that's not to say you have to show every element of your personality, but the part that you decided, okay, this is what I'm sharing, I think it's going to land better and we'll feel it. It will be more resonant if it's just from you. But a lot of people are using auto cues for scripted stuff, and they're or trying to learn. It depends how long a piece you've got as well, I suppose. There's no way I could have learned in the time frame I've got. To this morning, for example, I was looking at notes, but actually, if I was doing something to my audience, or it's online, social media, I would just try and speak from the heart, having done some bullet points first. But
There's there's a designer who I reference quite regularly, Kate Finch. You'll all have heard me talking about her. And she does face to camera almost every day. She does something, but most of the time she says a single sentence. So she says, "Today I'm talking about bathrooms," and then she has a carousel behind that. And so you just all she needs to do is say that single
mm,
sentence to the camera, and then or she'll say, what do I think about skylights? Read about it in the caption. And then it's all in the caption. So you get the founder presence, but you don't have to have 60 seconds of fluent, coherent language. And I think that's a really great way to start because it's so it's such a small ask, and you can record one sentence 50 times if you have to. That's not an onerous amount of work. So I would look at her and just look at how she does it, because she's got such a strong founder presence.
And that's another point that's useful is taking the time to look at who you are inspired by. And an exercise that I've done in the past with my clients when we're looking at imagery that we're finding really inspiring and how we want to position ourselves is to kind of distill it down to 10 images, or it could be 10, less, it could be 5 people that you're finding really inspiring, and looking for the kind of overlap and what similarities there might be or what themes there might be, that actually you can start to get really specific and granular about what it is that's inspiring. And then you almost have to take a step back and look at the process they're using and working out if that aligns, because as I said earlier, it's all very well, sort of looking left and right. And actually, it's just about getting really honest as well. Perhaps you don't need to be doing the videos in the way that someone is doing. There's often other ways of doing it. Like Julia's just said, one line, as opposed to somebody who's really effortless and communicating a minute's worth. That's a tall order. That's a lot to do. But actually, just little snapshots. And if we're looking specifically at Instagram, it's prioritizing much shorter form content anyway. So we don't need to consider the longer reams of it. It can be a lot more accessible.
Any other questions? Yes, Caroline.
Hi, Nicky. I love how calm you are. It's amazing, like the way that you talk, and I aspire to that. But actually, I'm probably quite ADHD. So either I'm in high creative mode or I'm got these different modes. How much are you trying to kind of regulate yourself? How much are you trying to show yourself? Does that make sense, in the way that you naturally are?
Yeah.
And how much are you trying to have that slightly calmer? Because when you speak, there's a natural authority to it, and I totally understand that, but I'm not sure. I'm sure that's actually how I am with clients always. And there's a goodness to that, but there's also, you want to be seen as credible. And actually, when people don't know you, I understand that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think actually my natural tendency is also potentially quite ADHD. And actually, it's just something that I have developed and I've worked on. But I think it's also looking at how much of your personality you want to convey. And for me, so much of my kind of initial energetics, let's say, I actually work out of my body first. And so there are things to do in terms of the preparation. This might sound a bit crazy, but we've still got the kids' trampoline, and it's one of the things I really like to do. Trampolining and bouncing or running or brisk walking is a really good way of actually kind of dropping back into your body and almost kind of diffusing that kind of energy. So that's one of the first things that I do. But a lot of it is about what I was talking about, really, with connecting to the breath and connecting into your body, because when we're kind of neck up and we're kind of in that's often where it's really sort of energetic. And actually, once we kind of, it's about practicing and sort of getting more into the body and being a little bit more sustained. And then it's like anything, I suppose. It's like a reps thing of like the practice of that. And it's not to say you need to then become a completely different personality, because your personality is exactly why people want to work with you. That's exactly what is setting you apart from others. So we really want to make sure that that's not somehow, flattened in any way, but it's just about perhaps it doesn't feel as measured because it's just not been practiced enough. And actually there's different exercises. I won't go into them now, but there's quite simple ones with connecting into the body, breath, and then what you're saying, just to kind of ground. And so much of it is the energy of that then translates in how you're communicating. If that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. I do yoga, and I'm thinking maybe I should record after.
Yeah,
for a yoga
exactly.
session.
That's a brilliant idea. Yeah.
Okay.
Really good.
And I've got a trampoline as well, so that's good.
I love a trampoline.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Hi, Nicky.
Hi.
I'm going to expose myself slightly here in as much as I did a talk recently, and I was of the belief that all these things are great experience to do. It was a talk on something that took me slightly out of my comfort zone, but I thought, well, it's fine. I can talk about it from my perspective and from, they say talk about what you know, right? So I thought, okay, I'll talk about it from my perspective. And the moderator, they didn't have a moderator. So various things happened at the last minute. So it was slightly House of Cardsy just before we went on. And the guy that was organising it became the moderator. And then somebody that was meant to be on the panel couldn't come. So he said, it's fine. I'm just going to merge the questions that I had, the specific questions. And I suppose I felt I was kind of ready, but not quite. No, well, I was ready to talk about the things that I was ready to talk about, but he kind of went off script, asked me questions that I wasn't comfortable with. And it was a really excruciating experience, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
And someone said to me afterwards, if he didn't ask you the questions that you thought he was going to, or that he had planned to, then perhaps you could have just said it anyway. You could have just introduced it. Like, why didn't you just come back to what you wanted to talk about? And quite frankly, at that point, I was so thrown by it. And actually, someone in the audience who knows me said, it was fine, it was good, it was really, you did really well. And someone else that was on the panel with me said, I thought it was great what you were talking about, it was really interesting. And then I watched a bit of video that someone had taken, and it was just cringy, because in my mind, I was thinking, if I was in the audience now, I'd just be like, what's going on? It's really boring. And I just wondered, in that situation, when, I mean, it's slightly different than, you're in much more control when you're doing your own posts and things. But I just wondered whether you, or even Julia, have any kind of thoughts on, there's pushing you out of your comfort zone. And then there's, in order to, like you were saying about kind of test your capacity, I just thought, whatever happens, it's going to be good. And I did come away thinking, well, I did a lot of research on a topic I wouldn't have otherwise done. And I did get some practice, and it was out of town, so I didn't have to worry too much about too many people I knew being in the audience. But I just wondered what, when is taking yourself out of your comfort zone too far?
That's such a tough thing to have happened. Actually, when you're thinking it's going one way and you're prepared for that, and then somebody derails it, that's really hard. That's really difficult. And I think it's about having techniques. If this were to ever happen, I mean, it probably won't happen again, but it's about having techniques physically that you can, even in the moment, get back to a sort of regulated state, even whilst being observed. And there's sort of actory ways of doing that, because actors also get terrified and they get stage fright, and, it can happen. So actually, if you have an awareness of things like that, to somehow, and it's all connected to breath really, to bring you back into a slightly more regulated state. But how you perceive the event and how it's read by others is always going to be very, very different. And actually, what would be wonderful is if it didn't completely put you off doing another.
It won't. It won't. I'll just have a different approach to it.
Yeah.
The lady that did it with me said, oh, you were amazing. You were so calm. I couldn't believe how calm you were. I just didn't stop talking. And I would, whereas in my mind, I'm thinking, you've got so much to say because it's your topic. It's not my topic.
Yeah.
But and I too, funnily enough, was trained as an actress in my younger years. So I can do those
you can
things.
access it.
And the language that you're talking about makes sense to me, the exercises and things.
Yeah.
And maybe I was doing that. But in
Quite
terms
possibly.
of actually what I had to say, I felt like I was really inarticulate and really struggled to actually make my point at all. So it was just, it wasn't the best experience.
That sounds tough. Yeah.
I think I had a client who contacted me just recently.
Thank you, Nicky.
Who was about to be on a panel, and she'd had a pre-chat, a pre-call with the panel host, and the panel host had not filled her with confidence that they would have much in the way of questions. She was concerned that she would get there and there wouldn't be much structure in the actual event. And so we talked about it, and we talked about, with media training, for example, with politicians, where they get trained to have a message. It's their message that they are going to deliver. And it doesn't matter what question they get asked. actually what they're going to tell you is the answer to their message. They're going to give you their message.
And they never answer the question
They
they're being
never answer
asked.
the question,
That's
no.
so true.
But I think if you're going to be on a panel like that, then having a sort of, well, here's what I'm going to tell the world, even if it isn't the answer to the question that I get asked, at least gives you something to use. And it is amazing how the majority of people probably wouldn't even notice. They would just see somebody who was articulate and knowledgeable and, had quite a lot to say on a particular subject, even if it didn't actually relate to the question that they were asked in the first place. I think it's incredible, Nicky. Sometimes I'll record something and I'll think, oh my God, I broke down in the middle of that, and I paused and I paused and I paused and I paused. And I watch it back and it's like half a second.
Yeah.
It just, it feels like a lifetime. But when you actually watch it back, it's nothing at all.
And I think
that's definitely what happened to me.
Time becomes
on stage. I was just like, I felt like I'd frozen because I thought you've just thrown me completely, and I don't know how to get over this hump. But maybe it wasn't that long.
And I think, although it's slightly different, Julia, what you're saying in terms of a recording, having pauses and little moments of thinking and reflection, I think we're in danger of kind of stripping everything out of that when we're thinking. If we get too caught up in, certainly in terms of social media and Instagram and algorithm and people being bored because they need to, click through really quickly. But actually it's those moments that make us think, oh, that person's really considering what they're saying. They're really thinking. And I think in this, I don't know about your feed, because obviously it's all algorithm, but mine is so full of AI already, communicating in Instagram. And actually to have these little moments of humanity that separate us from that, I think is also really important. So maybe not thinking about, particularly if it's a video, that these things have to always be edited out, because actually it's a bit like a clue that you're really there, you're really in the moment, you're really thinking, and you're really communicating.
And I actually think that that's an aspect of humanity that we're going to come back to, because is it the Edits app that you can cut out literally like every nanosecond of
silence,
of silence, and what you end up with is a stream of conjoined work.
It's very strange to watch.
Yeah. Whereas I know when I watch people I'm interested in, that I admire, I'm very happy to give them the time to collect their thoughts and to, to think about saying something interesting. Any other questions? I think we're getting towards the end of our time, but I don't want to miss anybody out. Anyone else who would like to ask anything? No? Okay. Well, in that case, Nicky, enormous thanks to you for coming in today. It's been really interesting to hear that there's life the other side of all the humiliation and trauma, that it's possible to have a relationship with a camera that isn't a horror, but obviously that we can work our way towards that in gentle steps, but perhaps with an intention to continually push ourselves, so that we're constantly progressing a little bit as and when we sort of feel ready to make that transition.
And exactly. Thank you for having me. And I think it is really important to think about the intention behind it, because not everything you're going to be doing has the same potential outcome, but that's what gives it a real kind of focus. But it's been lovely talking to you. I've had a really nice time. Thank you.
And on our retreat that we're going to be running together on the 22nd of March, you will have the time to get into some of these techniques and methods, won't you? So you'll actually be dealing with those in the sessions that you're running.
Exactly. So in the incredible surroundings, we'll have a lovely time. I'll have lovely food and sauna and potential pond dip. It will be scheduled so that we have some time together, and we're looking at what I've barely touched on really today, but we're looking at the body, we're looking at breath, we're looking at voice in the morning session, and then how we can then apply that directly into the afternoon, where we will have a chance to explore camera work. And so it's not sort of the technicalities of camera, although I can help you with that as well. Very basic sort of framing, but actually it's about applying what we've learned in the morning and actually having feedback from us in the room and our peers in the room, which is also very, very valuable. Sometimes we learn a lot from observing others in their learning as well. So there will be lots of opportunity to have a go, to play. And it's not, and let me just preface this, it's not very actory. It won't be anything, you know, too thespy, I can assure you.
Okay, well, that's wonderful. So thank you very much, and I'll see you in March in Stenning.
See you then. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
it's going
you
to be
so
good.
much, Nikki. Thank you,
You're
Julia.
welcome. Nice to meet you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.